Hello, my friends. Andy Falco Jimenez for the Andy Falco Show, and we're going to be on part two of the school board meeting in December. This is the recap of the hostile takeover of PYLUSD by the teachers union Cabal, which includes, as I always like to remind people, the NEA, the CTA, and the APLE, and then, of course, even around us, Orange Unified Teachers Union to Anaheim Teachers Union. They all help each other out when there's an election going on. If there is a candidate they need to try to harass and illegally do as many things as possible, like stealing signs and banners and that kind of stuff, you'll have other teachers and other representatives of the school board come over and help out. So it's an entire cabal of people. It's almost a criminal, if not a criminal enterprise in many ways. So one thing I want to just do is keep this on one subject today. And so I'm covering in these multi-part shows is actually two school board meetings. One was the real school board meeting, and then there was an emergency school board meeting, I believe 24 or 48 hours later. I've lost track of time with the holidays and travels and a whole bunch of other stuff and all the other shenanigans that are going on in the world that I discuss and talk about with people on our other show. And forgive me if I got some of the times slightly wrong, but it all was in the month of December and they were very closely together. And so I'm going to be bringing a couple different things together. It may not be specific to the school board meeting that happened on Tuesday, the actual school board meeting, but there's a lot of stuff happening that are related to that school board meeting. I hope that makes sense. So as usual, I want to make sure that you understand that when I'm talking about teachers union, I'm talking about a completely different entity than teachers who are individuals who teach at our schools and do many of them. The majority of them do a fantastic job and show up every day. But there's a significant number of those who do not. In other words, they show up to maybe their schools, but they're so busy with indoctrination and caring about somebody's race and sexual proclivities, or about how they can get pornography. They're so sidetracked with other things. Education tends to be the last thing on their mind. So you got those people would be included in the teachers union cabal. Again, we have a majority of teachers that are doing a great job every day, and then many of them I know and love, and I spend a lot of time with talking about these things that are going on now. Many of them make a lot of statements, but do not want to do it publicly because the teachers union is a very aggressive group, a very aggressive organization that will make sure that those teachers who complain, who are whistleblowers, so to speak, get fired, get harassed, and just feel completely uncomfortable until they finally quit or go somewhere else. Those teachers, I won't say their names or anything like that, but it's a large number. It's significant. I'm going to leave it at that. So let's go back to the campaign one more time. I did this on the last show, but it's important for you to understand that these are the things that they tried to tell the people in Placentia, Fullerton, and Brea, who unfortunately voted for the teachers union to bring them back into our school board and into our district. These are the signs that they saw everywhere because the teachers union was busy stealing the signs of the candidates in those particular two areas. Excuse me. So this is one of their flyers, and it was also a banner that says "Save our schools." They didn't say save our schools from one specific thing, but the first thing is that they lie by telling you to stop the lies. This is what the certain demographic of people do in our entire, country, is that to them, lying is truth and truth is a lie. You got to understand, everything is the opposite. And that is just clear on this particular flyer. So they start off with stop the lies, and then they lie about the past administration, which is the recent past administration, which was the majority school board, which was conservative leaning. And then we have our executive staff who are now suspended. So they wanted to claim that they are wasting tax dollars. None of those things are happening. They weren't wasting tax dollars or anything. As a matter of fact, they were discovering tax dollars that was being hidden from a previous administration, and they were spending money on education and those things that improved education. That's not wasting tax dollars. When you're spending money on education in public schools, that is not wasting tax dollars. But to the school board or the teachers union, spending it on education and safety and care of kids, to them, that is wasting tax dollars. Stop playing politics. You got to understand that teachers union is only politics. It is a political arm. It is a PAC, a political action committee for the Democratic Party. So that's all they do is play politics. But they want you to believe that these three majority school board members in the past board were playing politics. No, they were fighting for our kids and education. That is not playing politics. That is doing their job. Save our principals. They tried to claim that 25 principals have been fired. No, there was 2 that didn't have their contracts renewed. There were some that moved and went other places, but there was only 2, and they were the worst. One of them was criminal in nature, we believe, and the other one could have been criminal in nature, but he had and this is Joey Davis, he had a hostile work environment by the police officers that were working in El Dorado filed against him, amongst a whole bunch of other things that he was doing. And those are the 2 that we got rid of. Of course, you would get rid of idiots like that. And then save our school culture. What they want you to believe is that there is some culture that was being harmed by the past administration, which this is just one more speaking point, which has no bearing on anything. What they want us to think is culture is that they want you to believe that they want you to understand that we need to bring back making sure that the white students are hated and are oppressors, and then everybody else is oppressed, and that LGBTQ people are being murdered every day on school campuses. That's the culture you want to go back to, that belief system that those things are occurring. No, we don't want to do that. We want to go back to believing that they're just kids. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter what sexual proclivities they have. It doesn't matter what they do as hobbies. It doesn't matter that they don't play sports. They just get educated. That is our culture. They don't like that culture because that doesn't cause animosity, or it doesn't cause chaos, or it doesn't force programs to be introduced that bring money to people that should not be around children at any point in time. We have a few of those in our school district, people that should not be around children, and yet they are. So all of those things you got to understand are not true in the sense that those things were happening in the previous administration of just a few months ago. Just the opposite was happening. So I want to go through just very quickly the accomplishments of Dr. Alex Chernis and what the money that was being spent, which every school district spends money every year in some way or another, or some fashion or form, whether it's repairing things that need to be repaired, or introducing some new program, or replacing things that get old and need to be replaced, or roofs need to be fixed, or lighting becomes poor, or there's some new building code that needs to be addressed, or what have you. Those things happen every single year. And at least in California, not much happens in the sense of creating new schools with new innovative programming and bringing in new systems of teaching, to bringing in teachers that are trained to do something slightly different that seems to be something that's beneficial to kids in their education. Those things rarely happen because the CTA does not want that to happen. They don't want improvement. I know you're saying, Andy, how is that possible? I'm telling you, I've been studying the teachers union for years now. And the one thing they really hate is when a school begins to do well. And they say, oh, no, wait a minute, we can't have that, because then other schools that are doing poorly may see that a school is doing well, and they're going to want to replicate that. If they replicate that, then we can't ask for millions of dollars. We can't create bills and nonsense in a knee-jerk reaction to say, the reason these children are not doing well is because of racism. The reason that these children are doing well is because they're stupid. The reason they come up all these things and say, we're going to need more money to fix these things, when in fact, all you need to do is make improvements. And in some cases, those things are going to cost money. So let's just look really quick. I promise you I'm going to make this fast because I've gone over it several times in many other shows, but it's important you understand that while Dr. Alex Chernis was not suspended, in the brief year, this is just a fraction of what he was able to accomplish. So he facilitated the opening of new preschools, 3 of them. Regardless of whether that was going to happen or not, he made sure that it did happen, and it happened in a way that it covered as much of the school district as possible. Hired a highly skilled and diverse executive team and principals. Absolutely, he did that. We have our first Black superintendent, and he's our first Jewish superintendent, and then a whole bunch of other people. So he's done a lot to bring in skilled and diverse executive staff. Engaged the entire community through the first State of the District event ever by a superintendent or anybody else, round tables, visits to city council meetings, biweekly Monday messages, and visits to and with other local organizations, which I've not seen any other superintendent do. They go to the office and they go home after work. Uncovered ineffective illegal employee compensation practices, and Gary Stein had a hand in doing that. Identified $43 million in district funding sources previously never presented to the school board or public at a meeting or study session, including capital facility funds, developer fees, school cafeteria funding, etc. And so I'm just going to come back off of this. So these nitwits in the teachers union and a few parents, Bonnie Conte, Esther Kim, and a whole bunch of other idiots that are in our community, they're saying, oh, they're spending money needlessly. And they ignore the $43 million that he uncovered, that much of that is now being able to be used for children, the education and the creation of many of these programs that are going to help children for years and years to come, long after some of these people are dead, and long after they're going to help the children of the people that are some of the kids that are currently in school. And you got to understand that $43 million that was uncovered, that was hidden, is some of that money that is being used now, that now they are suddenly screaming about and saying they're illegally using money to create education. How dare they create education potential and amazing innovative programs? How dare they do that with this $43 million that we didn't know about, that was being hidden by previous executive staffs? How dare he use that money for good? We need it to be used for evil. How dare he? So that really is, you go back and look at that flyer again and go, wow, we were really duped by those idiots. And the people in Fullerton and Placentia and Brea should be banging their heads against the wall, looking in the mirror and say, I can't believe I fell for this nonsense. All right, back to the thing. All right, continue past the district's first multi-year contract with our employees in many years, thus giving them raises and bonuses. What? While providing a long-term fiscal budget for our board, increased compensation for several education aides by over 50% to make us more competitive in hiring and to honor their work. So to get better teachers, because we have a way of incentivizing the best teachers in the country to come to us. Increasing enrollment year to date, over 900 plus more students than last year at this time. So let me, I'm actually going to move forward, I think, if I can. Yeah, let me just move forward really quick. So I want you to understand. So this whole thing about enrollment stuff and the numbers, the teachers union says, well, he said there was this number and now there's this number. First, you have to understand that for every year leading up to the year that Dr. Chernis came in, we are losing 400 students a year. Now, to swing that the other direction and bring it to zero, you have to increase enrollment by 400. And then if you're going to get a positive, and then you add that, and you can't. So depending on how you work the numbers, and everybody does this, I can go on to all the explanations, how people use numbers and stats and statistics to bend their way. But just the simplicity of the discussion, just understand we've been losing, I will even say 300 to 400 students every year for the last 4 or 5 years. Every school year, losing hundreds of students, which adds up to thousands of students. Right? For the first time in several years, we have a reversal, which means that you have to add the 400. So you need to make sure and either maintain 400 that we're going to leave, that we're thinking about leaving, but because of Alex Chernis, they decided not to leave, or they added. And then on top of that, we have something like 21, 22 new students on top of that. So that may not seem significant. That's that smaller part, the tip, the 22 students, because that's what the teachers union wanted to focus on. No, he only increased it by 22. Hey, yeah, but we've been losing 400 every year. Okay, so let's just say the 22. Okay, I'll say, you know what, maybe the numbers are slightly different and maybe something happened. Maybe there was misunderstanding or what have you. I don't know. But it is still better than all the districts around us, like Santa Ana Unified School District, which is needing to fire 350 teachers because they have not seen increased enrollment. They've been losing thousands of kids, just like PYLUSD. And so now, because of all of that, because every butt in the chair in a school is money, Santa Ana Unified School District has to fire 350 students. And then after they fire teachers. After they fire the teachers, now, and the superintendent wants a raise. And they're going to prove it, according to the last article I saw, that they're going to prove giving a superintendent who has caused the unenrollment of children over the last several years, not an increase in enrollment. And they're going to give this idiot, this is the teachers union. So I just want you to understand that this isn't unique to our district, the nonsense and the stupidity and the incompetence on how to handle the finances of a school district. This is happening everywhere because this teachers union is involved and in charge. And the people in Brea and Fullerton and Placentia put these people back in charge. So that's why this is going to happen here. Even though we tell them every year that you're doing the wrong thing, they don't care. They just continue to do the wrong thing. You have Anaheim Unified School District. The last I heard on an article was 100 and something teachers that need to be fired because they can't afford to maintain them. You got San Diego, which is firing hundreds of teachers. San Bernardino, Riverside school districts are all firing hundreds of teachers. The one that isn't, PYLUSD, because of Dr. Alex Chernus increasing enrollment, whether it's 9,000 or 22, whatever it is, we're not needing to fire one teacher or hundreds of teachers because we can't afford to have them anymore. So let me go back to that slide. So sorry, increased compensation. There we go. Increased compensation for special education aides. Oh, I already read that one. Sorry. Electronic board agendas, retain more principals at their sites than in the past 5 years. Plus, that is in contrast to the 25 that they said that were fired. Visits every school once per month, more than any previous superintendent. Winter camp for every elementary school in the district, not just for some. Created Orange County School of Computer Science, a PYLUSD charter school, a PYLUSD charter school. A PYLUSD charter school. Why am I yelling that? You'll know in just a bit. Created the Universal Sports Institute, which is unique to PYLUSD. There may be a couple other sports institutes, but nothing like the Universal Sports Institute that we have here. PYLUSD received a $200,000 pathway program grant and proposing self-funding for OCSCS and USI, which undoubtedly the tyrant Marilyn Anderson will not allow that to go through. All right, so those are just, again, some of the accomplishments. But what you have to understand, because he also fixed air conditioning in many of the gyms that was failing for many years, not just the year that he was superintendent. It had been failing for years and they did nothing about it. He's funding the kitchen over at Valencia High School, which for 40 years has had nothing done. Not just in the year that Dr. Alex Chernus has been involved, but for years they've been complaining about it, but none of the previous superintendents did anything about it. But Dr. Alex Chernus is doing something about it and has been doing something about it. And again, I could go on. There's just so many programs. But you got to understand, and you have to remember, keep this in mind, when you're fixing things, when you're creating things, and when you're bringing in new innovative things so that we're not in the dark, that we're not in the dark ages like many in the school district, what does that need? What does that need? It needs money. But he's used very little money out of the bank, so to speak. There's programs like developer fees that are given by the state. There are many other programs that feed in money if you have them going on. If you're not developing something new, then there's not going to be no use for developer fees. You're not going to use that money. That's what these nitwits don't understand, is that he's developing something new. It has to be something completely different. It can't be like the lights at El Dorado. Developer fees can't be used to put the lights up at El Dorado because the stadium exists. It's not a new development. It is just adding a benefit or some type of feature that improves something that's already there. A new thing, which is a new development like USI, those funds can be used for USI in much of creating that program. So again, and then we have the 43 million that was discovered that was being hidden. So the money has to go out, but it's an investment in our kids. And that's what that money's for. Any money that is in the control of the school district, it only makes sense to use that money when it benefits children and their education and their health and their safety while they're in the care of the school district. But that's not what Marilyn Anderson, Quintero, and Buck think money should be used for. They think it should be used for them. They think that it should be used for anything that the teachers union wants, not for the education of kids. So they hate the fact that all those things were put in place, all those things were created, and that money was being used to improve the education of the kids. That they can't have, that they can't stand. And that's what I've been trying to tell you for several months as they file complaints against me and they call my churches and they give me a cease and desist and follow me in my church and serve me in front of the congregation, that they hate the fact that I'm telling you that Dr. Alex Chernus, Leander Blades, Todd Frazier, and I hate to say also Sean Youngblood in many ways, was doing everything they could to increase and improve the education of our kids and spending money on that appropriately. And because that's what we want as parents and the community of PYLUSD, is we want money spent on the improvement of kids, not anything else. But what happens when Marilyn Anderson and Carrie Buck and Tricia Quintero gain power and Marilyn Anderson becomes president, which is really crazy. That's as bad as Kamala Harris becoming president, maybe worse. Because Marilyn Anderson is in charge of my kids directly, in charge of kids, and she doesn't care. She has no care for the kids in the school district. And so what do they immediately do? They come in and they rejoin the California School Board Association, which I shared with you in part 1. So I'm not going to revisit that whole thing because I talked about that extensively in part 1. But that is another arm of the CTA, or the Teachers Union Cabal. And when Quintero says that she wants to be on the same page, and that's why she joined the CSBA, it's because she wants to make sure that the CTA and the CSBA are married in PYLUSD, so they could also control the superintendent. So now they have all 3 legislature areas of our school district. They're in control of teachers, school board, and superintendents. And that's what she means by being on the same page. So they can all now work together to put tampons in the boys' room, make sure that we erase girls, because now they're going to make sure that boys can compete in girls' sports, that boys can be in girls' bathrooms and in girls' restrooms, and which is the same thing as a bathroom, and say in the gyms. Thank you for that. And then also, and then at prom or homecoming, there is only kings and prince. We're no longer going to have queens and princesses. It's just we can have 4 or 5 kings. And what do the girls do? They say, "Oh, yay, that guy's wearing a dress. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, that's all we want." Okay, so that's that. That's with the CSBA. So they're all on the same page. Again, part 1 discussed that in great detail. I went on the first part, and also in the first part of this series with Mecca Linden, who was a previous superintendent. But I'm going to come back to that because I wasn't harsh enough on that. There is, you need to know more about this guy, this incompetent superintendent that I've dealt with on a few occasions. And it's way worse. There could be some criminal aspects to what he was doing. So let me get into that. And so that's why if you saw the very first original version, I cut that part out because it wasn't good enough. There's more information that needed to be included. All right. So now let's go to the next slide. And that is, what is the CTA doing now in PYLUSD? And what is the cost of dismantling our school district, which they are actively doing now? It's a hostile takeover. What are they doing now in addition to the $50,000 it's going to cost for being the CSBA? So these are the first things they decided to do after that flyer says, "Stop wasting money." All right. The second thing they did after joining the CSBA is they suspended 7 administrators from PYLUSD, which, do you remember on their flyer where it said, "Stop the needless loss of principals"? And I know it didn't say firing of teachers, but just the stop of losing people. So the first thing they do is they suspend 7 people. And there's going to be more. Don't get me wrong. The 7 isn't it. They're going to suspend teachers and other principals and other people that supported Dr. Chernis. This is just the beginning. These 7 are just the start of what they are going to do as far as removing people from PYLUSD that don't agree with the CTA. Anybody that doesn't agree with CTA is gone. So just be aware that is coming. So just in the 7, now coming back here, just in the 7, it's costing $120,000 a month, or $5,534 a day, for these suspensions and investigations. These figures do not account for the additional cost of employee benefits and retirement contributions. The funds spent on this needless investigation in just 1 month sorry about that, got a typo there, would cover nearly 10% of the one-time cost to build OCSCS. Can you imagine that? Wow. So you got a program that helps kids, but they want to do an investigation that is needless and unwarranted, and it is 10% of what it costs to build OCSCS. This investigation does not and will not benefit students at PYLUSD. In contrast, initiatives like OCSCS and USI directly impact student learning. In other words, they directly benefit students. Exactly what I said earlier. These wasted funds could have gone toward critical district needs. Alternatively, these funds could have provided 1,537 hours of additional teacher pay, directly supporting students and fulfilling the district's educational mission. So what are the results? So that was the cost. What are the results from the teachers union chaos? Human resources. The HR department is essentially non-functional currently, a void that undermines the support structure for staff and students. Resources are having to be spread out because now you have 7 executive staff members that are now on suspension and being investigated for who knows how long this is going to take. How long is it going to take to investigate, especially a place that's not used to investigations? I don't know. It could take months that this is going to cost our district. It could reach a couple $1 million. Educational services. This department is critically understaffed, creating gaps in instructional oversight and program support. Business and finances are going to be affected with the departure of the assistant superintendent. He's leaving because of the CTA and all their nonsense of business, and the apparent resignation of the director of finance. Financial oversight and strategic planning have been gutted. In their place, interim personnel, many ill-equipped to handle these roles, are left juggling responsibilities, creating operational chaos and compounding instability district-wide. The funds squandered on paid administrative leave could have been allocated to countless initiatives that would directly benefit students, families, and staff. And Quintero, Anderson, and Buck instead are set on burning the district down to settle personal vendettas, exposing a hypocritical and reckless approach to governance. So I'm going to come back now to a blue. Oops. There we go. So that's what's currently happening. And this is what you voted for, Fullerton, Placentia, and Brea. You voted for the chaos that they said was happening, but wasn't. But now it is happening because of your vote. And we're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars every month as this continues on, where you may lose one of the best superintendents and deputy superintendents that any school district has had in the United States. And in the end, we eventually will learn, we will lose OCSCS because Marilyn Anderson, for whatever reason, hates OCSCS. She's harassed the principals so bad over at OCS that she had to file not a hostile work environment, maybe she did, but she had to get a restraining order because so many phone calls were coming in, and she was calling the fire department on the school to have them inspect the school for fire dangers. And other state and county organizations to go in and harass the principal over at OCS and the students and the teachers, essentially, because she can't stand the OCSCS. She can't stand the USI. And so she's just been harassing the entire time that the school has been in existence, which is half a year now. And so you have a crazy person as president of PYLUSD. One last thing I want to leave you with is that I mentioned this on a couple of my Instagram lives and Facebook lives, and that is for years, Marilyn Anderson, Buck and Quintero and their clan and the CTA have all been calling Leandra Blades a murderer for such a long time. As a police officer, she had to defend herself as her life and her colleagues' lives were in danger, and she had to take action, and she used her sidearm to neutralize the situation. And that's what we do as police officers. All of us at some point have to pull out our gun, and on occasion, some of us have to shoot people because they put our lives or the lives of others in danger. And so she was doing her job. She's not a murderer. She was doing her job. She was cleared by the DA. She was cleared by the department, and that's all she wrote. Then you have Marilyn Anderson, who's married to a police officer that I worked with over at Anaheim Police Department, who shot a homeless person with a knife. What was Leandra's incident? She shot a homeless person with a knife. Actually, he had something like 10 or 11 knives on him. I think Marilyn Anderson's husband, that perpetrator only had one knife. Does she roll over in bed and look into you murderer? Or do her friends and family call him a murderer? Or does the CTA think that he's a murderer? Does Quintero think he's a murderer? Because apparently she thinks Leandra's a murderer. She said so through her campaign. Misty Jansen says all the time. So does she think that Marilyn Anderson's husband is a murderer? So should he be investigated again? But no, he was not a murderer. He was a police officer whose life or the safety and lives of somebody else was in danger. He took action because he needed to, because somebody's life needed to be saved. And another police officer shot that suspect and killed him. There was an investigation done. He was exonerated. He went back to work. See how it works. These people have no idea what it's like to do a job. They somehow found themselves in a position where they go, oh, wait, this is a lot more work than I thought it was. I just thought I'd just get this title, school board trustee, but there's a lot that I need to know. Apparently, I'm unqualified. One other example of that is we've seen over this last week is on New Year's Day, is that you saw the contrast between the chief of police of New Orleans and the sheriff in Las Vegas. And two completely different press reports that they had, if you didn't see that, could clearly showed you the incompetence of the chief of police of New Orleans and the competence of the chief or sheriff over in Las Vegas. Clear distinction. And you can continue to see how when there's a competent person that has high standards and high morals and has a high expectation from their police officers, how that looks. and what an investigation under the control of somebody that has a high standard, what that looks like in Las Vegas. And then you have, in contrast, New Orleans, which I've told people for years is one of the worst police departments in our country, alongside Albuquerque and Santa Fe in many ways. And I'm sorry about you guys. Unfortunately, your leadership. Now, the police officers there, again, you have to separate the organization from the people. You have police officers that are working their asses off and trying to do the best they can, but their leadership sucks. And they have just a poor way of running things. And that's just a fact. And I've investigated law enforcement for over 4 decades now, in police departments all over the country and in Canada. And I'm just telling you, between Chicago and Baltimore and New Orleans and Santa Fe and Albuquerque, those are some of the worst police departments, at least in the recent past, that I've had to deal with. But that's what you get when you get a poor culture, when you have the leader who is incompetent, doesn't know how to speak, doesn't know how to think on their feet, and you really don't see it. They're not exposed until something happens. And so you have these 2 incidents that occur, and their incompetence is exposed immediately, including the FBI agent who was in charge down there. And it just might be an IPO, informational, whatever they're called. PIO. There we go. And so it just came to me. And so I believe she might just be that. But again, she gets on and says, this is no terrorist attack, as the ISIS flag is waving in the background. What pictures? It reminds me of that guy who says, this is a most peaceful protest, and the city's on fire behind him. And so you can see this incompetence. The reason I bring that up is you can see now you had competence. You had 3 fantastic trustees, Leander Blades, Todd Frazier, and on occasion, Sean Youngblood. And then we had Dr. Alex Chernus, we got Dr. Gates, and the whole other staff, the executive staff there. We had competence, we had things running well, we had things being created, we had things happening, we had money being spent on the furtherance of education, on the benefit of our kids, and everything was working out just fine. When you immediately bring in incompetence, Marilyn Anderson, and Buck has been there forever and incompetent forever. She's never been good. You bring 3 incompetent people and you can see what happens. Chaos, nonsense, unnecessary investigations, unnecessary money spent on everything but education. And that's what you have here. Okay, that's it. Just I'm going on this one subject, and that is it for this one. So I hope you have a great week. I will see you on part 3. And maybe we'll be talking about Superintendent Mecca Linden if I get enough information that I could do that. All right, my friends, that's it. We'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye.